My name is Steve, and today we're going to talk about a case, a crime of conspiracy, maybe what happened with Chuck Charles Morgan. This is one of the strangest and honestly one of the creepiest cases that I ever seen because uh, we are going to dive into a case of secrets, maybe alleged war between a man and the mafia. This is a story of Chuck Morgan, a businessman, a secret agent, maybe, or perhaps a victim of something far more sinister. Maybe. Have a cup of coffee and a blanket. This trial should be interesting. Charles lived in Arizona. With his family, it's a place Charles owned by himself. In a scroll company, he was so successful. On March 22 in 1977, he will leave his home to drop his kids off at the school. And then, boop, just disappeared. He went missing several days since then.
Hi, I'm Chuck's wife, and I couldn't agree more with him. As he said, that night on March 1977 was the craziest and most disappeared situation that I ever experienced in my life. As he said, he just disappeared. And then 3 days later, I woke up to sounds outside my home. I thought it may be a vulgar or someone vandalizing the streets, but when I went to check, there he was, barefoot, bound with zip ties. Even he couldn't speak, just pointed at his throat as well as he suffered any affliction. So I asked him if he couldn't write. He nodded his head and gave me a positive response. Having seen that, I passed him a piece of paper and immediately he had written. I was shocked because the message was clear. They dropped me and they will kill me, and also they will hurt you if I told something mhm, like that. Uh, he continued saying that he was drugged and was drunk something hallucinating.
Okay, as an investigator, I started digging into Chuck's case because none of it made sense. No fingerprints at the gun, no powder bars are consistent with self-inflicted shooting. Okay, but let's remember the gun was in his left hand. Chuck was right-handed. The official report said suicide, but what kind of man puts on bulletproof vest just to shoot himself in the back of the head? Chuck told his father he wrote a letter with the names of the people who had come for him if he died. The letter, what happened with that? Never found. You must be joking. He checked it out into the hotel days before he was found dead. A woman came forward anonymously, saying Chuck had shown her a briefcase full of cash. He told her it was to buy up a hitman, which the mafia wanted to kill him. I have interviewed dozens of people in my career, but what about this? This case, it says, with you, because deep down you feel it, Chuck Morgan shouldn't die by his own hand. He was silenced.
I agree with partner because Chuck's body was found in the desert, so near of his guard with a magnum next to him. His own weapon. No fingerprints, no suicide notes. There was just a two bills stuffed into his pocket.
Okay, but what happened with that bill? It had names written on it Spanish names, Masonic symbols, a map crudely drawn, and the words Ecclesiastic 12:1-8, a Bible passage about death and return of the soul of God. It's poetic, almost theatrical. It wasn't suicide a note, it was a message.
I was one of the first detective who investigated the Chuck Morgan's case. We followed the rules, we protected the crime scene, tested the gun, and looked for fingerprints. We had a big problem with the evidence. Anyone saw anything, no clear reasons why he could die. Additionally, there were many stranger things. There was a gunpowder on his left hand, but Shot was right-handed. His right hand had no gunpowder at all. The bullet hit the back of his head. It's not a usual place if someone shot himself. There were no fingerprints of Shock on the gun. He wasn't wearing gloves. At first, we agreed. Maybe it was a suicide, but the evidence didn't fit, and we couldn't prove it was murder either. The $2 bill, it wasn't normal. It had names, drawings, and Bible verse. I think it was a message. Shock should not just end his life. He was trying to wear us before someone made him disappear.
Well, after his death, two men showed up at home, and they say that they were from the FBI, and they flashed a baggage barely, and they saw police searched Chuck's files, his drawers, and even his safe. And they took something, I don't know what. When I called it to FBI later, obviously, they said, we didn't send anybody. It was so stranger. So, who were they? Who were they? I don't know. But sometimes I think if they had not closed the case and had investigated further today, my husband death wouldn't have become to a table press story. Something like entertaining to arouse the morbid interest of listeners and investigative journalists.
Yes, wife's Chuck today claims that Chuck Morgan's case is officially office, but as wife's Chuck said, it was called suicide and the investigation ended. But if we listened carefully, you know that the story doesn't make sense. If Chuck had killed himself, the evidence would have clearer than. But there were no fingerprints, no gunpowder, and on his right hand, no clear move, and no clear motive. Sorry, and someone hadn't been afraid of what Chuck knew. Maybe he wouldn't have died. And if police had investigated further, as my partner said, maybe we might have found the truth. Maybe next week we'll look into Chuck's financial records and we try to discover who was behind his. And if we find the right name, maybe we finally understand why he was silenced. So, without an accused, any evidence, the sentences remain one of the most famous cases without verdict and guilty. This kind of prosecution is recognized because there are no witnesses, and that is the rarest part of this case. So, the decision of this trial depends on you. I am Steve, and my partner says good night.
Have a good one.
Bye, Abu.
Bye.